idam shariram kaunteya kshetramityabhidhiyate etadyo vetti tam prahu kshetragya iti tadvidah.
The Lord said, "This body is, O son of Kunti, Arjun, a battlefield, kshetra, and the men who know it, kshetragya, are called wise because they have grown spiritually dexterous by perceiving its essence." Instead of being involved in this sphere, the kshetragya dominate it. So it has been said by sages who knew and comprehended its reality. When the body is only one, how can there be two spheres, Dharmkshetr and Kurukshetr, within it? In truth, within the one body there exist two distinct primeval instincts. There is first the pious treasure of divinity that provides access to the Supreme Spirit who stands for the most sublime Dharma. On the other hand, there are the demoniacal impulses made up of impiety which lead a man to accept the mortal world as real. When there is abundance of divinity in the realm of the heart, the body is transmuted into a Dharmkshetra, or field of Dharma, but it degenerates into a Kurukshetra when it is dominated by devilish forces. This process of alternate rise and fall, of ascent and descent, operates at all times, but a decisive war commences between the two opposing impulses when an earnest devotee engages in the task of worship in association with a sage who has perceived reality. Gradually then, while the treasure of divinity grows, impious impulses are enfeebled and destroyed. The stage of God realization is reached only after the complete elimination of the ill-gotten hoard of unrighteousness. And even the utility of the treasure of divinity is dispensed with after the stage of perception, for it is also then subsumed in the revered God. In chapter 11, Arjun saw after the Kaurav also the warriors of his own army plunging and vanishing into the mouth of the all-pervading God. Kshetragya is the character of the self after this final dissolution.
kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarvakshetreshu bharata kshetra kshetragyayor jnanam yattajnanam matam mama.
And be it known to you, O Bharat, Arjun, that I am the all-knowing self, kshetragya, in all spheres, and to me awareness of the reality of kshetra and kshetragya, of mutable nature and the self, is knowledge. The one who knows the reality of the sphere of the body is a kshetragya. This is vouched for by sages who have known the essence of this sphere by direct experience. Now Krishna proclaims that he too is a kshetragya. In other words, he too was a yogi, indeed a yogeshwar, lord of yoga. Perception of the reality of kshetra and kshetragya, of nature with its contradictions, and the soul, is knowledge. Knowledge is not mere dispute.
Tat kshetram yacchayatrikcha yadvikariyatascha yat sachayo yat prabhavascha tat samasena me shrinu.
Listen to me briefly on the whence and what of that sphere and its variations and properties, as well as on the kshetragya and his abilities. The sphere of action, of life and death, is changeable or mutable because it has evolved from some cause, whereas the kshetragya is possessed of authority. It is not only Krishna who says this. Other sages have also said the same.
ऋषिभिर्बहुधा गीतम् छन्दोभिर्विविधैः पृथक् ब्रह्मसूत्रपदैश्चैव हेतुमद्भिर्विनिश्चितैः.
This has also been said in various distinct ways by sages in different scriptural verses and well-reasoned, definitive aphorisms on the knowledge of the Supreme Spirit. Brahmsutr. That is so, say the Vedanta, great sages, Brahmsutr, and Krishna. All say the same thing. Krishna is therefore only saying what others have already said. Is the corporal body just what is visible of it? The question is taken up in the following verse.
Mahabhutanyahangkaro buddhirauvyaktamev cha Indriyani dashaikancha panchachendriyagochara Ichhadveshah sukham dukkham Sanghataschetana-dhriti etat kshetram samasena savikaramudaritam.
Speaking briefly, mutable physical body is the aggregate of the five elements, ego, intellect, even the unmanifest, the 10 sense organs, the 5 objects of sense, as well as desire, malice, pleasure and pain, and intelligence and fortitude. Summarizing the constitution of the body, which is kshetra, with all its variants, Krishna tells Arjun that it is made up of the 5 great elements, earth, water, fire, ether and air, ego, intellect and soul, which, instead of being named, has been called the unmanifest, metaphysical nature, and thus throws light upon primal nature with its 8 parts. Apart from this, the other components are the 10 senses: eyes, ears, nose, skin, tongue, organ of taste, hands, feet, genital organ, and anus. Mind, the 5 objects of sense, form, taste, smell, sound, and touch. Desire, malice, pleasure and pain, and consciousness and calm courage. The body, the gross corporal frame, is the composite of all these parts. This, in brief, is kshetra, and the good or bad seeds sown in it sprout as sanskar. Made up of components which have evolved from a previous source or nature, prakriti, the body must exist so long as these components survive. Let us now see the attributes of the kshetragya, who is uninvolved in and free from this kshetra.
Amanitvamadambhitvam ahimsakshantirarjavam acharyopasanam shaucham sthairyamatma-vinigraha.
Absence of pride and arrogant conduct, disinclination to do injury to anyone, forgiveness, integrity of thought and speech, devoted service to the teacher, outward as well as inner purity, moral firmness, restraint of the body along with the mind and senses. These are only some of the attributes of the kshetragya: indifference to honor and dishonor, freedom from vanity, and reluctance to hurt anyone, ahimsa. Ahimsa does not mean desisting from acts of physical violence. Krishna told Arjun earlier that he ought not to degrade his soul. To lead the soul to degradation is true violence, hinsa, whereas to elevate it is non-violence, ahimsa. A man who is inclined to the amelioration of his own soul is also actively devoted to the well-being of other souls. It is true, though, that this virtue has its inception from not hurting others. The one is but a necessary concomitant of the other. So ahimsa, mercy, honest thought and speech, faithful service to and worship of the teacher, purity, firmness of mind and heart, and control of the body along with the mind and the senses, and
Indriyartheshu vairagyam anahankara evacha janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanudarshanam.
disinterest in pleasures of both the world and heaven, absence of ego, constant reflection over the maladies of birth, death, old age, sickness, and pain.
Asaktiranabhishvangah putradaragrihadishu nityancha samachittatvam ishtanishtopapatishu.
Detachment from son, wife, home, and the like, freedom from infatuation, bearing with both the pleasant and the unpleasant with equanimity.
Mayi chananya yogena bhaktirauvyabhicharini vivikta desha sevitvam aratirjana sansari.
Unswerving devotion to me with a single-minded concern for yoga, fondness of living in sequestered places, distaste for human society. Fixing the mind firmly on Krishna, a yogeshwar, or on some sage like him, so that there is remembrance of nothing else except yoga, and devout contemplation of nothing besides the desired goal, dwelling in solitary places, disinterest in the company of men, and
Adhyatma jnana nityatvam tattva jnanartha darshanam etaj jnanamiti proktam ajnanam yadatonyatha.
constantly resting in the awareness that is called adhyatam, and perception of the Supreme Spirit, who is the end of realization of truth, are all knowledge, and whatever is contrary to them is ignorance. Adhyatam is the knowledge of God's dominance. The awareness that is derived from a direct perception of the Supreme Spirit, the ultimate essence, is knowledge. Krishna said in chapter 4 that the man who tastes the manna of knowledge generated by the accomplishment of yajna becomes one with the eternal God. Here too, he says that apprehension of the reality that the Supreme Spirit is knowledge. Whatever is opposed to it is ignorance. The aforesaid attributes, such as an attitude of equanimity toward honor and dishonor, complement this knowledge. The discussion of the problem is now concluded.